a first-class cabin, a $10,000 seat, and a confrontation that should have been simple. When Dr. Evelyn Reed, the CEO of a billion-dollar tech firm, found a belligerent passenger in her seat, she was polite. The passenger, Brenda Jenkins, was not. She refused to move, sneering, "I'm not moving for her." But Brenda didn't know two things. Evelyn wasn't just a CEO. She was a scientist on a mission to prevent a catastrophe. And in 60 seconds, the pilot's voice would come over the intercom, grounding the entire flight and exposing a secret that would make Brenda's arrogance the most expensive mistake of her life. Dr. Evelyn Reed did not move through the world. She navigated it. Every step was precise, every decision weighed, every moment optimized. At 42, she was the founder and CEO of Reed Innovations, a biotech and software conglomerate that had quietly become the backbone of 3 different industries. Today, she was navigating the chaotic river of JFK's Terminal 8, an oasis of calm in a bespoke, dark teal pantsuit. She was tall, her hair styled in immaculate locks, and her gaze, behind simple, elegant glasses, missed nothing. She wasn't just flying, she was on a rescue mission. 2 days prior, Reed Innovations had finalized the $4.2 billion acquisition of a smaller, struggling company called Aerotech Solutions. It was an acquisition Evelyn had fought her board for. Aerotech wasn't just a software company. They were the primary provider of navigational guidance and auto-landing software for Global Sky Airlines, one of the world's largest carriers. The ink was barely dry on the contracts when Evelyn's new chief security officer, poached from the NSA, had found the skeleton in the closet. He called it Priority Zero, a dormant, deeply embedded vulnerability in Aerotech's core navigation code. It wasn't just a bug, it was a catastrophic flaw. Under a specific set of common atmospheric conditions, a little wind shear, a high humidity index, a low visibility approach, the software could misread the glide slope sensor data. It wouldn't just be wrong, it would be confidently wrong, telling the autopilot it was 300 feet higher than it actually was. It was a mass casualty event waiting to happen. Evelyn was flying to Global Sky's headquarters in San Francisco on their own metal, Flight 217, to personally oversee the integration of the patch her team had worked 72 sleepless hours to create. Her phone buzzed. It was Robert Mitchell, her CSO. "Evelyn," his voice was tight. "It's worse than we thought. The vulnerability isn't just on the 787s. It's on the entire 737 MAX fleet, too. The code was cross-pollinated." Evelyn stopped dead in the middle of the terminal. A man carrying a Cinnabon bumped into her, muttered, "Watch it," and moved on. She barely noticed. How many active aircraft, Rob? Globally? With Global Sky and its partners? 450, right now. Her blood ran cold. And the patch? It's ready to push, but we can't do it while they're in the air. It requires a hard system reboot on the tarmac. If we push it now, it could trigger the very flaw we're trying to fix. We have to ground them, Evelyn. All of them. Evelyn looked at the departure board. Her flight was boarding. "I'm at the gate. I need to make the executive call from the plane right before they close the door. It gives us maximum time to coordinate with their SFO Ops Center, which is where I'm headed. If I call from the terminal, the news might leak before their ops team can control the fleet, causing a panic. It must be coordinated." "Agreed," Rob said. "But the window is microscopic. The second you give the order, we initiate Quarantine Protocol 0. Global Sky's Ops VP, David Chen, is standing by. The order will go from your phone to my server to his console in a single handshake. From that second, no Global Sky plane takes off. Anywhere. But Evelyn, if you make that call after your plane's door is closed and it's sterile for pushback, Your own flight will be the one plane we can't save." "I understand," Evelyn said, her voice a flat line of pure steel. "I'll be in 2A. I'll make the call the literal second before they tell me to turn off my phone. Stand by." She ended the call and walked toward the first-class boarding lane. Her face was a mask of professional calm, but inside, her mind was a whirlwind of calculations, risk assessments, and the chilling, visceral image of 450 planes, thousands of souls, all depending on a phone call she had to make in the next 10 minutes from a specific airplane seat. She was the first in the first-class line. The gate agent, a cheerful young woman, scanned her pass. "Welcome, Dr. Reed. Have a wonderful flight to San Francisco. You're in 2A, window seat." "Thank you," Evelyn said, her voice betraying none of the crushing weight on her shoulders. "I'm looking forward to it." She stepped onto the jet bridge, the scent of recycled air and jet fuel filling her lungs. She gripped her phone in her hand. 2A. 10 minutes, one call. The cabin of the 787 Dreamliner was bathed in soft purple mood lighting. First class was a 1-to-1 configuration, offering private pods. Seat 2A was a window seat on the port side. As Evelyn turned the corner from the galley, she stopped. There was a woman in her seat. She was in her late 50s, with brassy blonde hair, a vibrant magenta tracksuit, and a face set in a look of permanent, sour dissatisfaction. She was digging through an oversized, logo-covered purse. In the adjacent aisle seat, 2B, sat a man who looked like her husband. He was pale, sweating slightly in a golf shirt, and looked profoundly uncomfortable. Evelyn paused, checked her ticket, and then the number on the bulkhead. 2A. "Excuse me," Evelyn said, her voice polite, quiet, but firm. The woman, Brenda Jenkins, looked up, annoyed at the interruption. "I believe you're in my seat," Evelyn said, holding up her boarding pass, clearly showing 2A. Brenda squinted at the pass, then at Evelyn. She looked her up and down, a slow, dismissive appraisal that took in Evelyn's dark skin, her professional suit, and her calm expression. A small, unpleasant smirk formed on Brenda's lips. "Oh, I don't think so, honey," Brenda said, her voice a nasal drawl. "I like the window. You can take mine." She gestured vaguely toward the back of the plane. "Ma'am, your seat isn't next to this one," Evelyn replied, patience already wearing thin. The clock was ticking. She could feel her phone vibrating with a text from Rob. "Ready. Standing by. My seat is 2A. I'd appreciate it if you'd move." "Brenda," the husband, Gary, whispered, his voice cracking. "Brenda, just get up. Our seats are 14C and 14D. Brenda shot him a look of pure venom. "Shut up, Gary. I paid good money for this airline." She turned back to Evelyn. "Look, I got here first. It's not a big deal. Why don't you just go find another seat? I'm sure they're all the same." This was the moment the interaction shifted. It wasn't a mistake. It was a power play. Brenda was intentionally, pointedly disrespecting her. Other passengers were starting to board, squeezing past, sensing the tension. "Mum," Evelyn said, her voice losing its warmth, "I am not interested in another seat. I am interested in my seat. 2A, please move." "Or what?" Brenda sneered. "You'll call a manager. Look at you, all dressed up. Did you even buy this ticket? Or is it one of those, diversity perks?" Gasps came from the passengers nearby. Gary Jenkins turned a shade of grey. "Brenda, my God, stop it!" Evelyn's eyes hardened. The insult, so blatant, so rooted in base-level racism, was shocking. But she didn't have time for this. She had lives to save. "Mark," Evelyn said, flagging down the lead flight attendant who was approaching, his face a mask of practiced concern. "Is there a problem here, ladies?" Mark asked. "Yes," Evelyn said, presenting her boarding pass. "This is my seat, 2A. This woman is in it and refuses to move. Brenda immediately turned on the victimhood. She's harassing me. I just sat down, and she came over and started threatening me. I'm an elderly woman. I'm not feeling well. I need the window. Mark, a consummate professional in his mid-40s, looked at Evelyn's pass, then at Brenda. Ma'am, may I see your boarding pass? My husband has it, Brenda snapped, waving at Gary. Gary fumbled, his hands shaking, and produced 2 crumpled boarding passes. Mark took them, and his smile tightened. Ma'am, your assigned seats are 14C and 14D. This is the first-class cabin. You are not ticketed for this seat. I just wanted to see, Brenda stammered, caught in the lie. No, Brenda, you told me you were going to try and get an upgrade, Gary muttered, just loud enough for everyone to hear. The humiliation turned Brenda's face crimson. She doubled down. He's wrong. This is ridiculous. I'm a platinum member. I'm not moving. You can't make me. This is reverse discrimination. You're only siding with her because she's... Well, you know. Mark had heard enough. His voice dropped to the no-nonsense tone all flight crews possess. Ma'am, you are not ticketed for this seat. You need to move to 14C now. You are delaying the boarding process. I'm not moving, Brenda shrieked, gripping the armrests. I will not be treated this way. I'm going to sue this airline. I'm going to sue her. Evelyn looked at her watch. 10:28 a.m. The final boarding call was echoing through the terminal. The gate was about to close. Rob was texting again. Evelyn, we're losing the window. She had a choice. Fight for her seat, or save the flight. Save all the flights. If she let this woman delay the plane, security would be called. The door would be held. But the plane would be stuck at the gate, and the confrontation would be the focus. Her call. The timing would be ruined. If she backed down, she could get to any seat. Mark, Evelyn said, her voice cutting through Brenda's tirade. Everyone stopped. It's fine, Evelyn said, her eyes locked on the flight attendant. I will take 14C. It's fine. Mark looked at her, stunned. Dr. Reed, you absolutely do not have to do that. This is your seat. I am calling the captain and gate security. No, Evelyn said, with an authority that brooked no argument. There is no time. Please just let me get to a seat. I need to finish a work call before the door closes. It's urgent. Brenda's face twisted into a grotesque mask of triumph. See, she said, smoothing her tracksuit. Problem solved. Some people just don't know how to be reasonable. Gary Jenkins looked at Evelyn, his eyes wide with a mixture of shame and awe, as this CEO, this woman of clear and obvious importance, simply nodded, turned, and began to push her way against the flow of boarding passengers back toward the economy cabin. Mark, speechless, could only watch her go. Evelyn, meanwhile, was fighting her way down the aisle, her heart hammering against her ribs. She was no longer a CEO in first class. She was just a passenger in a middle seat, racing against a clock that held thousands of lives in the balance. The journey from first class to row 14 felt like moving through wet cement. The aisle was a bottleneck of rolling luggage, parents wrangling children, and passengers fumbling with headphones. "Excuse me, please," Evelyn said, her voice polite but strained. "Pardon me, trying to get to my seat." She received more than one annoyed look. To them, she was just another late, pushy passenger. She finally saw it. 14C. A middle seat, wedged between 14B, a college-aged kid already asleep with a hoodie pulled over his face, and 14D, which was, to her horror, still empty. It was Gary Jenkins's seat. She slid into 14C, a space that felt impossibly small after the pod she was supposed to be in. Her knees jammed against the seat in front of her, but it didn't matter. She had her phone. Her screen was alive with notifications. "Rob, EOD 1029. Door close. Need verbal go. David Chen, Global Sky. Standing by for your directive, Dr. Reed. She looked at her watch. 10:29:15. She heard the thud and hiss of the main cabin door being sealed. A voice overhead. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for departure. She was out of time. She hit dial on her preset conference line. This is Evelyn. Initiate. Rob's voice was sharp. No preamble. Evelyn, thank God. We were 30 seconds from a no-go on the window. We thought you were off the plane. I'm here, Evelyn said, her voice low, intense. Initiate Quarantine Protocol 0. Confirm, Rob. Confirmed. Protocol 0 is active. David, you're on. David Chen's voice joined the call. Dr. Reed, David Chen here. We are receiving the directive. My God, the entire fleet. Ground them, David, Evelyn commanded, as the plane began to slowly, powerfully push back from the gate. Ground them all. No takeoffs, no exceptions, until the patch is verified and green-lit by my team. Understood. Understood, Doctor, David said. The order is going out fleet-wide right now. We're citing a critical system-wide technical fault. We'll manage the fallout. You just saved us. Thank you. We'll talk when I land in SFO, Evelyn said. I'll coordinate with your tech team from... Ma'am. Evelyn looked up. A flight attendant was standing over her. Ma'am, you need to turn off your phone. We are pushing back. All devices must be in airplane mode. Of course, Evelyn said, her thumb hovering over the end call button. It's done. Thank you, Rob, David. She ended the call and switched her phone to airplane mode, the screen going dark. She leaned her head back against the rough fabric of the economy seat, and for the first time in 72 hours closed her eyes. It was done. The quarantine was active. The patch would be pushed. The catastrophe was averted. She had lost her seat, suffered a humiliating, racist confrontation, and was now crammed in a middle seat for a 6-hour flight. But she had done her job. She felt the plane's tug as the engines spooled up. They were taxiing. Then, a jolt. The plane, which had been moving steadily, slowed, and then stopped. The engines, which had been building to a roar, whined back down to a low hum. A nervous silence fell over the cabin. The kid next to her in 14B pulled his hoodie down. Dude, what gives? Evelyn's eyes snapped open. Her heart, which had just slowed, began to pound. No, it's done. The quarantine is active. This flight should be clear. Unless the patch hadn't gone through to this plane. Unless the sterile window Rob mentioned had been missed by seconds. Then the intercom crackled. It wasn't the cheery, welcome aboard voice. It was the captain, and he sounded shaken. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Peterson from the flight deck. Apologies for that sudden stop. We have just received, and I am not, this is a new one. We have just received a mandatory, fleet-wide directive from our central operations in San Francisco. He paused, and the sound of him rustling a piece of paper was audible. Effective immediately, the entire Global Sky Airlines fleet is grounded. All aircraft, worldwide. A wave of groans and panicked whispers swept the cabin. I repeat, the captain said, his voice now grim. We are grounded. This is due to a critical, last-minute technical advisory affecting the navigation software on our aircraft. No Global Sky plane is permitted to take off until a full diagnostic and software verification is completed. We have no timeline for this at present. We will be returning to the gate immediately. In first class, Brenda Jenkins, who had been sipping a pre-departure champagne she'd demanded, slammed the glass down. This is unacceptable, she shouted, loud enough for the front half of the plane to hear. I have a connection in SFO for a cruise. This is ridiculous. It's her fault. I bet she complained. That woman—" Mark, the lead FA, was already walking down the aisle, his face pale. "Ma'am, this has absolutely nothing to do with the seating issue. This is a fleet-wide emergency order." "I don't believe you," Brenda shrieked. "This is because of me, isn't it? This is harassment." In 14C, Evelyn Reed simply stared at the seatback in front of her. It wasn't her complaint that had grounded the flight. It was her command. The call she made from this tiny, cramped middle seat had, in an instant, brought one of the world's largest airlines to a screeching, unprecedented halt. And the woman who had put her there, the woman currently screaming in Sat 2A, had no idea that the inconvenience she was protesting was the very act that had just saved her life. The taxi back to the gate was the longest 10 minutes of the passengers' lives. It was a journey of confusion, anger, and creeping fear. Critical technical fault was not a phrase anyone wanted to hear, especially after they had already pushed back. Cell service was still offline, so no one could tweet, text, or Google what was happening. They were in a sealed metal tube of pure speculation. Brenda Jenkins provided the running commentary for the first-class cabin. "This is a lawsuit," she announced to no one in particular. "Gary, get your phone out. You filmed this. This is incompetence. They can't just ground planes. I'll bet it's a union thing, a strike." Gary Jenkins, who had finally taken his assigned seat, 14D, next to Evelyn, had been silent. He was ashen. He had watched Evelyn make the call. He had heard her say, "Initiate quarantine protocol 0. He'd heard her say, "Ground them, David." He was a regional manager for a logistics company, not a fool. He didn't know what she did, but he knew that the woman his wife had just tried to humiliate was, in fact, the person who had just grounded the entire airline. He was sitting next to a nuclear bomb, and his wife had just lit a match. Evelyn, for her part, was deep in thought. The pilot's announcement had confirmed her success, but also the severity. A fleet-wide grounding was a multi-hundred-million-dollar decision. David Chen hadn't flinched. It meant the threat was as bad as Rob had assessed, or worse. Her work wasn't over. It was just beginning. The thunk of the jet bridge connecting to the fuselage broke the tension. The fasten seatbelt sign dinged off. Immediately passengers were on their feet, grabbing bags. The captain came on again. "Folks, we will be deplaning at this time. Please take all your personal belongings. We have no further information on the status of this flight or any other global sky flight today. Please see a gate agent in the terminal. We apologize for this." The exodus was a chaotic mess. People were angry, confused, and pushing. Evelyn, with nowhere to go, waited patiently. Gary Jenkins, in 14D, seemed physically unable to move. He just stared at her. You did this," he whispered, his voice trembling. Evelyn turned to him, her expression unreadable. A problem was identified. It's being fixed. "My wife," Gary started, his voice cracking. She didn't know. She's stressed." "She was racist," Evelyn replied, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. "It wasn't stress. It was entitlement. Excuse me." She stood and slipped into the aisle, merging with the slow-moving crowd. As she reached the front galley, she saw the scene that was unfolding. Brenda Jenkins was blocking to the doorway, arguing with Mark. "And I demand a full refund and a voucher for a hotel. And I want your name." Brenda was pointing in Mark's face. "Ma'am," Mark said, his patience evaporated. "You need to deplane. Now. You are blocking the exit." "I will not be treated." "Ma'am." Two new figures appeared at the door. One was an airport police officer. The other was a man in a sharp, dark grey suit, his face creased with anxiety, an airline ID badge swinging from his neck. The man in the suit, David Chen, scanned the deplaning passengers. His eyes darted past Brenda, searching. He didn't even register her. Then he saw Evelyn, his face flooded with a relief so profound it was almost comical. "Dr. Reed," he called out, pushing past the arguing Brenda as if she were a piece of furniture. "Dr. Reed, thank God." He rushed to Evelyn, extending his hand. "David Chen, VP of Operations. We spoke on the phone." Evelyn shook his hand. "Mr. Chen, a pleasure." Brenda Jenkins stopped yelling. She, and every other passenger, still on the plane, watched as this airline executive, flanked by security, treated Evelyn like visiting royalty. "Your call," David said, his voice low and urgent. It was, "I have no words. The directive went out. We've got 43 planes that were on active taxiways. We stopped 12 of them at the literal threshold of the runway. Dr. Reed, you prevented an unimaginable catastrophe today." Evelyn nodded. "The work isn't done, David. We need a command center. My CSO and his team need secure, high-bandwidth access to your mainframe. We need to push the patch." "Already handled," David said. "We've cleared the Admiral's lounge. We have a secure link ready for your team. Whatever you need, it's yours. The entire airline is at your disposal." He gestured for her to precede him off the plane. "Please, this way. We've got a cart waiting." Evelyn walked off the jet bridge. David Chen was on one side, the police officer on the other, as a de facto escort. Brenda Jenkins stood frozen in the galley, her mouth hanging open. The entire scene was short-circuiting her brain. The diversity hire she had bullied out of a seat had just been greeted by name by a top executive, flanked by cops, and thanked for something that grounded the airline. She turned to Mark, her voice a small, confused squeak. Who is that?" Mark looked at her, his expression one of pure, unadulterated contempt. "That, madam, is Dr. Evelyn Reed, and I'm guessing she's the one who just saved our lives." He then nodded to the second police officer, who had been waiting behind the first. "Officer, this is the passenger, Ms. Jenkins." She refused to take her assigned seat, attempted to occupy a seat she did not pay for, and caused a significant disturbance to the flight crew before departure. The officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." The color drained from Brenda's face. "What? No, it was a mistake, a misunderstanding." "Please, ma'am," the officer said, his hand gesturing firmly toward the terminal. "Now." As Brenda was being led off, Gary Jenkins finally stumbled off the plane. He saw his wife being escorted by police. He saw Evelyn Reed disappearing into a private cart with the VP of Operations. He felt his phone vibrate. He pulled it out. It was a Google alert he had set for Reed Innovations. The headline, just breaking from a financial wire, read, "Reed Innovations finalizes acquisition of Aerotech Solutions. CITES, urgent security review of airline software." Gary leaned against the wall, his legs giving out. Aerotech Solutions, Global Sky Airlines, Dr. Evelyn Reed, and his wife. "Oh God," he whispered. "Oh no, 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 no." The JFK Admiral's lounge was a tomb. It had been cleared of all passengers. The cheerful bar was dark, the buffet tables empty. In the center, Global Sky's tech team had erected a pop-up command center, a tangle of cables, laptops, and massive monitors displaying flight maps of the entire world. The map was a sea of red dots, all labeled grounded. Evelyn was at the head of the main table, her suit jacket off, sleeves rolled up. She was on a secure video line with Rob Mitchell and a dozen of her top engineers. For 4 straight hours, she hadn't moved. She was a general commanding a digital war. "I don't want it stable, Rob. I want it bulletproof," she was saying, her voice sharp. "Push the patch to the simulators first. Run it through every weather protocol we have. I want 10,000 simulated landings before we push this to a single live aircraft." "Copy that," Rob's voice came back. "Sims are spinning up. First results in 20 minutes. David Chen was pacing at the back of the room, on the phone with his own CEO, and, judging by his frantic tone, likely the FAA. "Yes, sir. No, we don't know. We are working with the vendor. Dr. Reed. Yes, the new owner of Aerotech. She's here. She's handling it." Outside the lounge, the terminal had descended into chaos. Thousands of passengers from dozens of cancelled flights were stranded. The news was breaking, and it was breaking fast. News vans were parked outside, and a reporter was doing a live stand-up. An unprecedented move. Global Sky Airlines has grounded its entire global fleet, citing a critical software fault. This comes just days after the software's provider, Aerotech Solutions, was acquired by tech giant Reed Innovations. Brenda and Gary Jenkins were sitting on the floor by a charging kiosk, their luggage piled around them like a fortress. Brenda had been released by the police with a warning and a citation for interference with a flight crew, which came with a hefty fine, and, as the officer cheerfully informed her, an almost certain lifetime ban from the airline. "This is your fault, Gary," Brenda was hissing, her voice a low, furious whisper. "You just sat there. You let them talk to me like that. And that woman, who does she think she is?" Gary was rocking back and forth, not listening. He was staring at his phone, at a Forbes article he had been studying for weeks. It was a profile. "The Alchemist, How Dr. Evelyn Reed is Turning Code into Cures." There was a picture of her. The same cool, appraising eyes. The same quiet power. She was holding an award, standing next to the president. "Brenda," he said, his voice hollow. "What, are you listening to me? My cruise. Brenda, shut up." It was the first time he had ever spoken to her that way. She recoiled, stunned. "What did you say to me?" "I said shut up," Gary repeated, his eyes wide with a terror Brenda couldn't understand. He held up the phone. "Do you know who that is?" Brenda squinted at the photo. "It's her. So what? She's some rich whatever." "She is Dr. Evelyn Reed," Gary said, his voice trembling as he read from the article. "Founder and CEO of Reed Innovations. Market cap, $68 billion. She's one of the most powerful people in technology. In the world." Brenda's mind still couldn't make the connection. "So? That doesn't give her the right to... Gary finally snapped. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in. "My meeting, Brenda. The big one in San Francisco. The multi-million-dollar contract I've been working on for a year. The one that was going to save my division and get me the vice president promotion." What about it?" "It was with them." Gary's voice was a choked sob. "Jenkins Supply Co. is a primary logistics provider for Reed Innovations. I've been trying to get a face-to-face with her executive team for 18 months. Our contract is up for renewal, and you... The blood drained from Brenda's face. The complex, terrifying architecture of the situation finally slammed into her. The seat, the insults, the smirking, the diversity perk comment. She hadn't just insulted a random passenger. She had insulted the single most important person to her husband's, and by extension, her own, entire future. "Gary," she whispered, her hands starting to shake. "Gary, you can fix this. You can go talk to her. Apologize. Tell her I'm sick." Gary just laughed. It was a horrible, broken sound. "Talk to her?" "Brenda, she's in that lounge saving the entire airline she just bought. She's saving us from a plane crash. And what did you do? You called her a diversity hire and tried to steal her seat while she was doing it." He buried his face in his hands. It's over. It's all over. Brenda looked at the closed doors of the Admiral's lounge, at the police officer now standing guard outside. She saw the news cameras. She saw the angry, stranded passengers. And for the first time, she understood the sheer, crushing scale of her arrogance. She hadn't just lost a seat. She had lost everything. Karma, Evelyn Reed had always believed, was not a mystical force. It was simply the logical, often delayed, consequence of one's actions. It was the universe balancing its books. For Brenda Jenkins, the audit was here, and it was brutal. For the next 8 hours, Evelyn, David, and their respective teams worked without a break. Food was brought in and ignored. Coffee was consumed by the gallon. Evelyn's team found the vulnerability, isolated it, patched it, and ran it through 50,000 simulations until they were certain it was secure. The patch was a work of art, small, elegant, and ruthlessly effective. At 7:45 p.m., Evelyn gave the final go. "Push it, Rob," she said, rubbing her temples. "Fleet wide." In the command center, the map of red dots began to blink, one by one, to green. From Sydney to London, from Dubai to Chicago, grounded planes were rebooting their systems. The log jam was broken. The crisis was over. David Chen was crying. He was openly weeping, shaking Evelyn's hand. Dr. Reed, your company, you've done more for us in one day than Aerotech did in 10 years. It's what we do, David, Evelyn said, finally allowing herself a small, tired smile. Now I believe you owe your passengers an airline. The first flights began boarding around 9 p.m. The terminal was a mess of relieved, exhausted travelers. Gary and Brenda Jenkins were not among them. Their flight, like many, had been outright cancelled. They were rebooked on a flight for the following afternoon, not to San Francisco, but back home. Their trip was over. They sat in silence at a deserted gate, the terminal around them slowly coming back to life. Gary's phone buzzed on the seat between them. It was an email. He didn't have to look, but he did. From Sarah Bishop, VP Procurement, Reed Innovations. Subject, Contract Review, Jenkins Supply Co. JIC. Dear Mr. Jenkins, this message is to inform you that Reed Innovations is indefinitely suspending our contract renewal negotiations with Jenkins Supply Co., effective immediately. While the technical details of the global sky grounding are not public, Dr. Reed's executive team was made aware of a related personnel incident on Flight 217 this morning. Dr. Reed's personal report of the event, which included the conduct of a passenger later identified as your spouse, has been filed with our board. Reed Innovations has a zero-tolerance policy for racism, harassment, and belligerence, not only from our employees, but from our vendors and partners. The behavior exhibited by your representative, Ms. Jenkins, was, to be blunt, appalling, and constitutes a severe breach of the character clauses in our potential partnership agreement. We cannot, in good conscience, partner with a company whose leadership, or their immediate families, exhibit such profound and public bigotry. The risk to our brand and our corporate culture is unacceptable. We will be moving our logistics portfolio to a new vendor. All outstanding JSC invoices will be paid. A termination of intent packet will be messengered to your corporate office. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. Gary read the email, and then he read it again. He felt nothing. It was the calm of the condemned. He didn't even have the energy to be angry. He just felt empty. It's done, he said, sliding the phone over to Brenda. She read the words. Appalling. Profound and public bigotry. Brand risk. No, she whispered. No, she can't do that. It was me, not you. You didn't do anything. They can't fire you because of me. They can, Brenda, Gary said, his voice dead. They did. That's what character clause means. We're a family-run business. You are my partner. You represent me. You just cost us our biggest client. You just cost me my job, my father's company. It's gone." Brenda began to wail. It wasn't the performative shriek from the airplane. It was a deep, ugly, guttural sob of genuine despair. "We're ruined. We're ruined. You have to fix it, Gary. Go to her. Beg." "Beg?" Gary looked at her, and for the first time, he saw her not as his wife, but as the person in that email. "Beg the woman you tried to have thrown off a plane? Beg the woman you insulted in front of 50 people? She's not just a CEO, Brenda. She's the one who just saved the plane we were on. She's a hero, and you treated her like dirt." He stood up, grabbing his own carry-on. Where are you going?" Brenda cried, grabbing for his arm. He pulled it away. "I'm going to find a hotel. I'm flying home tomorrow, and then I'm going to call a lawyer. I'm done. I'm done with all of this." He walked away, leaving her sitting on the floor surrounded by their luggage, the damning email glowing on the phone screen in her lap. The karma wasn't just a fine or a lifetime ban from an airline. It was the complete and total detonation of her entire life, her marriage, and her financial security, all for a window seat. The world did not move on. It pivoted. In the days and weeks that followed the global sky grounding, the story did not fade. It calcified into legend. Dr. Evelyn Reed's name, once known only in the exclusive, rarefied air of high finance and deep tech, was now on every news channel, every podcast, and every front page. She was the angel of the skies, the savior of Flight 217, the CEO who saved an airline. Reed Innovation stock had not just risen, it had become a vertical line, adding a staggering $10 billion to the company's market cap as the world's other airlines, terrified by the near miss, lined up to buy Reed's new, bulletproof, aero-secure software suite. For Evelyn, the adulation was a distraction. The work was what mattered, but she understood that in the world of business, perception was reality. And the reality was, she had won. Utterly. But karma is not a single thunderbolt. It is a complex, sprawling ecosystem of consequence. And while Evelyn's world was expanding, Brenda Jenkins' world was collapsing, atom by atom. Columbus, Ohio, 8 days after the grounding. The beige guest room in her sister Sarah's suburban house felt like a prison cell. It smelled of old potpourri and regret. Brenda Jenkins sat on the edge of a lumpy twin bed, staring at a small, buzzing television. She hadn't unpacked. Her designer luggage, once a symbol of her status, now just felt like a pile of expensive coffins in the corner. On the screen, a financial news anchor was interviewing a panel. "It's unheard of," one analyst said. Dr. Evelyn Reed didn't just buy a company. She bought an industry. She identified a catastrophic failure, solved it in 6 hours, and in the process made her new software the mandatory global standard. It's the most brilliant corporate chess move I've ever seen. "Dr. Reed," another said, "is a genuine hero. She's what every CEO should aspire to be." Brenda threw a pillow at the screen. "Lies! It's all lies! She planned this. It was a setup." The door creaked open. Her sister Sarah stood there, holding a mug of tea. Sarah was a dental hygienist who had scrimped and saved for this small house. She wore scrubs and an expression of profound, bone-deep exhaustion. "Bren," Sarah said, her voice flat, "you've been in here for 4 days. You're yelling at the TV again." "They're lying about her!" Brenda shrieked, her voice raw from crying. "And Gary, he just left me. At the airport. He abandoned me. After 30 years, he just left." Sarah walked in and set the tea on the nightstand. She looked at her older sister, at the ruined, puffy face, the unwashed hair, the $800 magenta tracksuit she was still wearing. I read the articles, Brenda, Sarah said quietly. All of them. And Gary forwarded me the email. What email? Brenda asked, her eyes narrowing. The email from Reed Innovations, the one that got him fired. He wasn't fired. He resigned. Brenda, stop it, Sarah snapped, her patience, worn thin over a lifetime, finally breaking. Just stop lying, I read it. Profound and public bigotry. Brand risk. Appalling behavior. They didn't just fire him, Bren. They annihilated his company's reputation. What in God's name did you say to that woman? It was nothing, Brenda stammered. It was a misunderstanding. She was just, I wanted the window seat. You called her a diversity hire, didn't you? Sarah said, her voice filled with a weary, ancient disappointment. You did that thing, the thing you always do, the sneer, the looking down your nose. But this time, Brenda, it wasn't a waitress or a valet. It was the woman who held your husband's entire future in her hands. And you just burned it to the ground. He'll fix it, Brenda insisted, grasping at straws. He just needs to cool off. He'll call. He has to. The cruise. He's not calling, Brenda. How do you know? There was a sharp, official rap on the front door. Because, Sarah said, I recognize the man who's been sitting in his car across the street for an hour. He's a process server, and I'm pretty sure he's here for you. Brenda's blood turned to ice. She heard Sarah open the front door, heard the low murmur of voices. Yes, she's here. Brenda Jenkins. Sarah walked back into the room, holding a thick, legal-sized envelope. She didn't hand it to Brenda. She just dropped it on the bed. It's from Gary's lawyers, Sarah said, her face a mask of stone. Divorce papers. He's citing irreparable harm to personal and professional reputation. He's not just divorcing you, Brenda. He's suing you for his share of the company losses. He's taking the house. He's taking everything. The cruise is cancelled. Brenda stared at the envelope. It was the end. Not a slow decline, but a cliff. She had spent her entire life demanding to be first, and in one afternoon she had become last in everything. Stamford, Connecticut. 4 days after the grounding, Gary Jenkins sat at the head of a 40-foot, polished mahogany table. He had never felt smaller. At the other end sat his father, Arthur Jenkins, 81 years old, with a spine of pure steel and the cold, clear eyes of a founder who had built a company from nothing. The other board members, old friends of his father, were patched in via video, their faces grim and funereal. The vote is unanimous, Arthur said, his voice as dry as old paper. The board accepts your resignation, Gary. Dad, please, Gary whispered, his hands trembling. It was a mistake. She's sick. I can talk to Reed's people. I can apologize. Apologize. Arthur Jenkins slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. You think an I'm sorry fixes this? Reed Innovations wasn't a client, you fool. They were our future. Our logistics contract with them was the leverage for our entire tech sector expansion. It was worth $40 million a year, and your wife, your liability, lit it on fire for a seat. I know, but nothing, Arthur spat. I sat in this chair for 50 years. I dealt with unions, recessions, hostile takeovers, but I was never, ever brought down by sheer, petulant stupidity. You were there, Gary. You were in 14D. You heard her. You saw who Dr. Reed was. You heard her make the call that saved the plane, and you just sat there. You said nothing. What could I do? Gary pleaded. You could have been a man, Arthur roared. You could have grabbed your wife by the arm and dragged her to the back of the plane. You could have fallen on your sword. You could have done anything but cower. Your weakness, Gary, your 30 years of enabling that woman's venom, that is what's as much to blame as her mouth. You are not a leader. You are a passenger. Arthur motioned to a lawyer in the corner. The resignation is signed. You will clear out your desk. You will be given a standard severance. And one more thing, Gary. Dad? You're out of the family trust, Arthur said, his voice suddenly calm, which was so much worse. I'm amending my will. My legacy is this company. You will not be the one to inherit it. You will not be the one to bury it. Gary Jenkins, 59 years old, was walked out of the building he was supposed to inherit, carrying a single cardboard box of his personal effects. His karma was not just the loss of his job. It was the loss of his entire life, his name, his legacy, all sacrificed at the altar of his wife's arrogance and his own cowardice. San Francisco, 3 weeks after the grounding. Evelyn Reed's office was an oasis of calm. From her 50th floor window, the bay stretched out, serene and blue. She was on a 3-way video call. Mr. Stratton, she said, a warm smile on her face. Or should I say, head of in-flight services. Mark, the lead flight attendant, grinned from his new office in SFO. He was in a sharp, tailored manager's uniform. Dr. Reed, it's an honor. My team, we just wanted to thank you. Not just for, saving us, but for handling that situation with such class. We're actually using it in our training now. You are? Evelyn asked, intrigued. Yes, Ma'am. We call it a Code 2A. It's a new protocol for handling a belligerent passenger who is also racially profiling. Your response? The calm, the de-escalation, the attempt to cede the seat for the sake of the flight schedule. It's now part of our manual. You didn't just save the software, Doctor. You made our jobs safer. I'm honored, Mark. Truly. The promotion is well-deserved. She clicked a button, and a new face joined the call. It was the college kid from 14B, Leo Davison, sitting in a messy dorm room, his eyes wide as saucers. Dr. Reed? Mr. Stratton? Wow, this is insane. Leo, Evelyn said, her smile broadening. I read your email. I want to solve impossible problems. I like that. I meant it, Ma'am. I know you did, which is why the internship application I sent you isn't a formality. It's a job offer. My aerospace division lead, Dr. Aris, is expecting you this summer. He's working on hypersonic navigation systems. I trust that's impossible enough for you? Leo's jaw dropped. He was speechless, just nodding frantically. Good, Evelyn said. And Mr. Stratton, Global Sky has agreed to sponsor Mr. Davison's final 2 years at Stanford. A small thank you from the airline you both helped save. Mark looked floored. Doctor, thank you. We reward talent, gentlemen, Evelyn said. And we reward integrity. I'll see you this summer, Leo. She ended the call. Her chief of staff, Chloe, walked in. That was generous, Evelyn. It was an investment, Evelyn said, standing to look out the window. But speaking of generosity, David Chen, the VP of Operations for Global Sky, was shown in. He looked like a new man, rested, happy, and carrying a bottle of whiskey so expensive it practically vibrated. Evelyn, he said, forgoing her title. A gift from my CEO. Pappy Van Winkle, 23-year. David, you really shouldn't have. It's the least we could do. The board also approved the new contract. We're not just buying your software, Evelyn. We're making Reed Innovations our exclusive, sole source partner for all flight critical systems. for the next 20 years. This was it. Not just a win, a dynasty. "That's magnificent news, David," Evelyn said, genuinely moved. "It's not," David said, his smile fading. He held out a thin, bound report. "This is the FAA's final, classified report. They declassified this one section for us. It's the simulation." Evelyn took it. Her eyes scanned the page. "They ran the what-if scenario," David said, his voice quiet. "Our flight, 217, landing at SFO at 1:35 p.m. The weather data for that day. It was a perfect match. High humidity, low fog, and a 15-knot crosswind. The exact conditions for the glitch." Evelyn read the conclusion, her blood running cold. "Catastrophic glide slope sensor failure confirmed. Simulation shows aircraft autopilot would have registered an altitude of 300 feet when actual altitude was 30 feet. High probability impact with terrain 1.2 miles short of runway 28L. No survivors." She looked up at David, her face pale. "My God." "You didn't just save the fleet, Evelyn," David whispered. "You saved our plane, the one we were on. You and me and Mark and that kid Leo and her. Brenda Jenkins. You saved her life." Evelyn closed the report. She thought of the sneer, the contempt, the diversity hire comment. "She has no idea," Evelyn said. "She never will," David replied. "But we do, and we will never forget it." 6 months later, a TGI Fridays in a strip mall outside Columbus, Ohio. Brenda Jenkins was trying to smile. It felt wrong, like stretching old, cracked leather. Her hair was a mousy brown, her nails unpainted, her suit a cheap polyester blend from a discount store. The 24-year-old manager, all acne and cheap cologne, looked at her resume. "So, Ms. Jenkins, it says here you have a lot of experience in event planning." "Yes," Brenda said, her voice overly bright. I managed a household. I planned fundraisers, parties. I'm excellent with people." The manager, Todd, sighed. "Look, lady, this is a hostess job. Can you smile and hand people a menu?" "Absolutely. Todd's eyes flicked to the TV above the bar. "Hey, turn that up," he yelled at the bartender. On the screen was a formal ceremony. The White House. The President of the United States. Brenda froze. For her decisive action, her brilliant foresight, and her calm under pressure, which averted the global sky crisis and saved an estimated 4,500 lives, the announcer's voice boomed. "The President of the United States awards the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Dr. Evelyn Reed." The camera zoomed in. There was Evelyn, poised, radiant in a dark blue dress, shaking the president's hand as the room gave her a standing ovation. "Wow," Todd, the manager, said. "That lady is a boss. My cousin's a pilot. He says they call her Saint Evelyn at the airports." Brenda couldn't breathe. The camera panned the front row of the audience. She saw David Chen, the executive who had ignored her. She saw Mark, the flight attendant she had threatened, now wearing a crisp, executive suit, applauding proudly. And she saw the kid, Leo, in a suit, sitting next to a man who must have been one of Evelyn's top people, looking at her with pure adoration. They were all there, the people from the plane, honoring the woman Brenda had tried to tear down. Todd glanced back at Brenda's resume, then back at her face, which was a mask of sick, white horror. He clicked his pen. "You know," he said, "I just Googled your name. Brenda Jenkins, flight disturbance. Are you that plane rage Brenda from the internet?" "No," Brenda gasped. It was fake news, a misunderstanding." Todd scoffed, looking back at the TV, where Dr. Reed was now shaking hands with smiling politicians. "Yeah, right. Look, I don't think this is going to work out. We have, standards. Good luck." He tossed her resume on the sticky table and walked away. Brenda was left alone in the booth. The sound of applause for Dr. Evelyn Reed filled the bar. She had nothing. No money, no husband, no home, no job, no respect. She had spent her life believing she was a first-class person, entitled to the best. But in the end, she was just an extra, a footnote in the story of a truly great woman. The karma wasn't the loss of her wealth, it was the crushing, permanent and public knowledge that she had been saved, and then justly erased by the very person she had deemed unworthy of a window seat. And that's where the story of Flight 217 ends. It's a powerful, real-life reminder that arrogance and prejudice have a price. Brenda Jenkins thought she was just stealing a seat, but she was confronting a force of nature. Dr. Evelyn Reed, a woman who held the safety of thousands in her hands. In the end, the hard hand of karma didn't just teach Brenda a lesson. It dismantled her entire world. The very woman she tried to humiliate was the only reason she was alive to see it. What did you think of Brenda's karma? Was it too harsh, or was it exactly what she deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love stories of drama, twists, and justice served cold, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more true stories where karma always wins.